Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. You dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Nathan is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. We broadcast 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. And that's the time to call in if you'd like to call us. And the number is 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. And we have a telephone listen line, and it's up, and it's running. It's been pretty good lately. 605-477-3249, 605-477-3249. And you can hear this broadcast on Genesis Communications Network, Republic Broadcasting Network, AM and FM affiliates, satellite, YouTube, and the telephone listen line. And, of course, GCNlive.com. I want to thank you all for being in class today. Nathan is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, soon, in about 4 years from now, he will be my friend. He's on the air with us right now. Welcome, soon to be my friend, Dr. Richard Allen Miller.
Good morning. Good morning, and I'm never going to let that one down, am I?
I must have spoken too soonly. Soonly.
Well,
so, Rick, are you there?
What I meant by all of that was that within a 10-year span, you get to see the length, girth, and width of someone. I mean, over a 10-year period, people go through all kinds of disasters and events. And not 5 years, but like 10 years. And so you actually see how they're going to behave in this situation, in that situation. Handcuffed, released, winning the lottery, being on the streets with a little cup and a harmonica. You get to see the length, girth, and width of someone's behavior. And that's where, in grade school, that's my oldest friends. I've got friends that I haven't seen in 20 years, and yet, if they were to walk in my door this moment, it would be as if no time had lost. All we go through changes, we're different, and yet, in friendships, it isn't like that. And that's one of the reasons why I say that friendships are probably the highest, literally the highest form of love there is. Even over romance and sex, all of it. During, love comes and goes, but friendships are forever. That's what I meant by 10 years.
Yeah, I know that. And of course
that.
I've been...
But you've got to do the salt anyway, just to mess with it.
I do. Yeah, I do.
You do.
Okay. So, Rick, before we get into death and destruction, and we're going to be talking about
that. There it is.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that today, class. Seriously. Before we get into that, I'd just like to ease into today's broadcast with a little bit of disbelief. There are a couple of things that I'm absolutely amazed with. So I'm going to make the announcements. I'm sure that the government corporations will try to use this against me, but I don't like paying taxes. I flat out don't like paying someone who has a gun to my head for the privilege of me spending my money to buy something that I believe that I need. But that's what taxes are. Okay? They have inserted themselves in my life without my permission. I've never voted for a tax increase. I've never voted for a tax. I'm a little smarter than that, but there are a whole bunch of people, allegedly, who have voted for taxes. They're out of their minds. But here we go. So I have figured out that if I buy something in Lebanon, Missouri, which I don't like going to Lebanon, Missouri, but there's a Walmart there, a supercenter. And if I want to buy something, I'm going to pay more than 8% sales tax for the privilege of buying it, whatever it is. But I figured out that in the little hamlet where I live, 20 miles away, the taxes are 6.1%. They used to be in the 5% neighborhood, but we had some stupid people who voted for a tax increase. So they raised our taxes from 5.7 to 6. Actually, we're 5.2 something percent. Now we're at 6.1. But I figured out that if I buy it online on the internet at Walmart, I can buy it at the lowest price that Walmart sells it for. And if I spend more than $35, I can have it shipped for free. And because I use my farm zip code, the tax is not 8% as if I went to the store. It's 6.1%. And I get free shipping. Now, this is going to be unbelievable. I'm going to tell you what I bought. So I had to spend $35. And we use a product called Fast Orange. It's a hand cleaner. It comes in gallon jugs with a pump on the top. It comes in half-gallon jugs with a pump on the top. So a gallon of Fast Orange is increasing in price. You know, it's like $15, $16, $17, $18. But I found it at Walmart. I could buy it for $4.98 for half a gallon, which is just a few pennies less than $10 a gallon. Great. And if I have it shipped to my house, I'm going to pay 6%, 6.1% sales tax instead of over 8%. And I'm going to get a nice heavy-duty box in the transaction as well. And they're going to put it in these Ziploc bags, real heavy-duty Ziploc bags so they don't leak. And it's going to come to my door and I don't have to go the 20 plus 20 mile trip. So here's what I bought. In order to get free shipping, I had to get over $35 in the transaction. So I bought 8 of these half-gallon jugs of Fast Orange at $4.98. It arrived yesterday, 2 days later, in 2 boxes. 2 separate boxes. The boxes are 13 by 13 by 15 inches. And one of the boxes had a sales total of $29.88. They put 6 of these jugs, 6 of the 8, in one box and 2 in the other. Now, I know for a fact that you can put all 8 of them in one box. How do I know that? Because I consolidated the boxes. They used about 50 feet of packing brown paper in one of the boxes and maybe 30 feet in the other. Literally. So we have 2 boxes. The boxes weigh 2 pounds apiece. I weighed them. The shipping material weighs about half a pound. And I have 6 jugs of Fast Orange in one box and 2 jugs in the other. Now, I went to UPS. Now, without tax, the purchase of the 6 is $29.88. I went to UPS to figure out how much, USPS, to find out how much it would cost me to ship that box. It would, without the box, without the packing, without labor, it would cost $26.45 to ship this box. The same distance that Walmart shipped it to me. The whole purchase price was $29.88, a couple dollars away. How is it possible? And that's only one box. Walmart shipped 2 of them. So if you figure that they spent $40 in shipping, how is it possible that they can sell me something for a little over $35 and spend $40 in shipping alone? How is that possible? What kind of a stupid business model is that? But that's what
There's another problem with all of this, and you haven't even mentioned it. It's that money that you spent is no longer in your community. It's gone forever.
Yeah, right.
And that means there's that money that was in your community, like a resource, a tree, a leaf that fell from the tree, that leaf for compost, that tree is gone from your community, and over a period of years, your community becomes a wasteland because there's no infusion of income. It's only going out. It's going to China or some other Mars, who knows, but it's not going to your local community for the betterment of your community. And that's why we have Weimart, we have Fred Meyer, and then we have Walmart. Weimart is local, Fred Meyer is regional, and Walmart is international. And why you shop at one place over another, even though the food is cheaper for the same spaghetti. The money stays in the community or it leaves the community. And there's a trade-off. And at the end of the day, your grandson's going to want to take a closer look at what Grandpa did.
Mm-hmm. The only problem with that, where I live, there's not everything you said is absolutely true. The problem where I live, Rick, and you've seen it, if you leave our farm, you got to go pretty far to find anything. Now, within a few miles, there's a farmers cooperative. They sell farm stuff, and it's a small cooperative. There's a post office with one parking space, literally one parking space. It's not open, all day. And then, if you go a little farther down the road, you'll find a gas station. That's it. That's shopping where I live. The post office, the farmers cooperative, and the gas station. Well, actually, if you go a little bit farther, you can get to one of those dollar stores. They invaded us. But other than that, and that would be sending our money outward also. But it's almost impossible to buy anything and keep the currency in circulation in our neck of the woods. It really is. It's really hard. We can't buy auto parts any closer than 20 miles away. Actually, a little over 20 miles. So if we want to buy something like a fuel line, an air cleaner, motor oil, 20 miles each way.
How did your grandfather do it?
My grandfather came from Italy, and he started his own business, and he worked until he was in his 80s. No retirement. He just worked and worked and worked and saved money, and he kept his money in the village because his village had a way of, it's a hardware store within walking distance. I can't get to a hardware store, if I walked, it'd take me a day, at least a day, to get to a hardware store. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us on the line. Mark in Illinois. Welcome, Mark.
Morning. You're speaking of a crisis period. You said that your program would be like about the crisis period, but I'm looking at Daniel chapter 11, and it has a duality, verse 40, Daniel 11:40, and it's talking about World War II, but at the time of World War II, America was fighting Hitler in Germany, and we made a covenant with the Russians, and when we did that, we violated God's covenant, because we're not to make any covenant with any people outside of our own people. That's Israel. And so this prophecy in Daniel chapter 11 is talking about World War II, which is now history, but now it's also talking about World War III. And it's also talking about the king of the south, which is Great Britain, and the king of the north, which is Russia. And we had that conflict in World War II, but it wasn't where we were fighting the Russians, but now we're going to. And this is the result of both of these wars. One is history, the other one's in motion right now. What I see with what the Lord has been showing me is that Russia, Iran, and the other forces of China are in the Middle East right now. I believe they're on the go. I believe that they're going to invade the land of Palestine. And the scriptures I think it's going to happen soon. I think it's going to happen within days or within weeks, that they're going to come down upon Palestine. They're going to invade it. They're going to take Jerusalem, and that will be the beginning of World War III and maybe the end of World War III, because I think World War III has been going on since 1950, when it started with the Korean War. And it hasn't, and that's why Korea is always coming up in the news, North Korea, because God's trying to show his people that we're in the end of days. And this conflict with Korea that started in 1950 is playing out. And what happened in World War II is playing out as well. And it's all coming to a head. So I really do, and I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but I do believe the Word of God says sound the alarm, because we're living in a time right now when I believe even people over in the Middle East can see what's going on, and they're in desperation because they know there's an invasion coming down upon them.
Silence. Well, that's interpretations and the way we choose to see what's going on in the universe. We are most likely in a so-called end of days because of the various natural disasters that are occurring right now, from the hurricane that hit Florida a couple of days ago to the earthquakes going on in Russia this moment, over 8.4. Now, those kinds of events are going to have global repercussions with continental shifts and landmass movement. And right now, satellite imaging is showing, infrared is showing lava being exposed up in the northern territories and down in California. That means there's going to be a plate movement. And now thermal imaging is showing lava from Yellowstone as far as Ohio. And when I say that, it's all underground, and there it is. And when Yellowstone goes, this is a super volcano. And we're talking about an event that is going to affect America literally, way beyond anything that we've ever even encountered biblically. And when I say that, we won't have another flood. That's something that God said won't happen again. But we are going to have fire. That is what this epoch is about, trial by fire. So, there will be survivors. Why would you want to be a survivor? That's a good question to ask. Now,
why would you want to be a survivor? I don't know. I don't think there's any other choice.
Well, you do have choices. You can let yourself go like an old man does.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Classon's website is richardallenmiller.com. Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. And he's going to tell you about an event that he's going to have pretty soon, this month. And as soon as Mark makes his comments. Mark?
Yeah, I had another thing, too, that you talked about your land, and you said something about, like a couple months back ago, you said there was a lot of topsoil on your land, and you thought it blew in from the dust storm.
The Dust Bowl.
Remember that?
The Dust Bowl of the 1930s,
yeah.
Yes.
Well, I don't think that's where it came from. I was looking at an ancient map of Missouri. It was actually the Israelites, the Hebrews, came to America 3,700 years ago during the time of Joseph from Egypt. But even the prophet Jeremiah was commissioned to smuggle all the temple treasure, the Ark of the Covenant, and the Tabernacle of Moses out of Palestine and ancient Israel. And at that time, these two lakes showed up in Missouri on this map. They don't exist no more, but there were two massive ancient lakes in Missouri. And I know you said you live in Wright County, so I was looking at this map, what I remember of it, and it covered the area where you're at. When you travel around in your area, if you probably look for the high points, the Hebrews usually built rock formations on the high points. So kind of like maybe like a lighthouse, they build these towers with these rock formations. So if you look, you might be able to find something. But in your area, there were two massive lakes that covered the state of Missouri. And Jeremiah the prophet came from the Gulf of Aqaba, the Red Sea, on a ship. And he smuggled this cargo out. He also went to Ireland first. And there's the folklore of Tephi. You can look into that, of the Irish kings who were the tribe of Judah. But he came to America, and he actually hid the Ark of the Covenant and the temple treasure and the tabernacle of Moses down in the southern part of Missouri, northern part of Arkansas.
Well,
and I believe that's where that topsoil came from that you're talking about. It actually was from the formation of ancient lakes that existed in your area.
All right. When we bought our farm, Mark, I wanted it to be high up on the hill, and we are high up on the hill. So there are a lot of farms that are lower, much lower than we are. So there's lots of hills here. I mean, we don't have the highest one, but we are on the top of a hill. And when people refer to us, those people who live on the hill. Actually, they add a few more descriptors to that, but yeah, we live on the hill.
So, I mean, have you ever thought about that, looking into, because actually when you're going southeast of, out of Nebraska, out of Omaha, once you're going into Iowa, that's where you'll come out. If you're you got to be on the southeast of Omaha, Nebraska, heading into Iowa, and if you keep going, there's a town that you'll hit. It's like Shenandoah. It's like Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, but that's the name of the town is Shenandoah. But you have to pass through like a pass, and that when you come out of, and then you could go south to St. Joseph, Missouri. But once you hit that dry lake bed, that is the beginning of one of the big lakes that used to exist and go down. But it couldn't go into Iowa, but it went down into Missouri. Massive lakes that existed in your area now that have formed rivers in Arkansas and Missouri. But you go back to National Treasure.
Where do I
you
find
go back to the movie National Treasure? That's a reality.
Okay, where do I find this map?
Well, you could probably go to Tephi. There's the folklore of Tephi, and Jeremiah actually wrote an ancient map, but it does not have that all that type of information on it. But if you look down, if you look down from Google and look at a three-dimensional, 3D, you can actually see these lakes if you're looking down from a three-dimensional and being able to see the top.
Okay, so I believe what you're saying, Mark, is that we would see low areas that were once lakes. Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
you'd actually see. Now, something happened in the area where it must have moved. It must do something that was a dam or some mountain or some hill that made a dam that kept the water, and something had to move in order for that all to disappear.
There are a lot of sinkholes in this area. Nothing like Florida that are man-made sinkholes, but there are sinkholes in Missouri. And how does that interplay with what you're talking about, or doesn't it?
Well, it could be like with the comets. I believe there's two of them. That also goes back to the time of Egypt And these two same comets that are here again today, one I believe is on the backside of the sun, the other one is between the sun and the earth. But I believe that these two comets that created all these, I'm not saying that God didn't do it because he's in control of everything, but he created these comets as well, and he used them to do the things that you read about in all these signs and events that happened in ancient Egypt.
Mark, let me ask you this. Is there an edge to the universe, or does it go on forever?
Well, the Word of God the Word of God never ends. The law, the law of God, what they call the law of Moses, nobody knows when it began, and nobody knows where it's going to end.
Okay. So you're saying, I believe you're saying that the universe is infinite, just keeps on going.
I believe God creates and he recreates, and that happens every day.
Rick, what are your thoughts about the universe? Finite or infinite?
Yes.
If it's finite, what's at the end? I was going to say, if it's finite, what's at the edge of it?
Here's the deal. You start with assumed truths, and then you have definitions, and then you postulate. Now, an assumed truth might be something like the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. If that's true, then the universe is this way. If space is curved, and we see examples of that in solid-state physics with tunneling, event horizons, and precursor waves, then that assumption is not true. The shortest distance is not a straight line. Now, which one is it? And which one is it? We don't know because it's an assumed truth. That's what makes us human, not God. We don't know because we can't go there from here. It's like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, where there's, the second smartest life form was the dolphin, and they left saying, thanks for all the fish. And the first life form, man was third in that movie, by the way, are these two mice that have been running experiments with humans running mazes. I love that movie, Hitchhiker's Guide. It's worth watching because it laughs at our presumptions that the answer to the universe is 42. Now, you can all laugh, but it shows the limitation of what science is and what science is not. And science is not any more correct than religion. In fact, that's probably why we have two brains. We have a little bit of this, and we have a little bit of that, and Malcolm is in the middle. That's called the moment. And it's like an hourglass. That's what your brain could be looked at, just like a cavitation process. Okay, that's a new way of looking at the universe. And when you do that, then certain doors open and others close. We have no idea what Göbekli Tepe is about. But today, we now realize that the Aborigines were part of that. There is absolute proof of that. And that is way before Abraham.
You mentioned the dolphin.
I'm sorry? There's a tunnel that goes from Scotland all the way under Europe, all the way down into Turkey. Now, I know that I don't know because I didn't record that, but I have seen inconsistencies in the reporting of history. We're not talking about the Bible now. I'm talking about even shorter periods like the Civil War. Why was the Civil War held? It wasn't because of slavery. It was about taxes. And I posted that just recently, and yet you don't even learn or study that aspect until you're in college. Now, why are our questions like this unanswerable. Well, that defines the distinction between God and man. Man can only see one side of something because he's not everywhere. And because he's not everywhere, his sight is limited. And that means, by definition, from a science point of view, it doesn't mean I'm right now. From a science point of view, God is that which cannot be known. You can only experience it. And if you work from that definition, it opens a different kind of universe of possibility. And to ask me, is it unlimited, the universe? Well, that's Gamow and his mathematics of infinities within infinities, the concept of hierarchies.
Rick, you're going to be presenting a seminar this month. Is that right?
This weekend.
This weekend.
In Grants Pass, Oregon.
Can you tell us about it?
It will be the training I did to determine who was going to be part of SEAL Team Number 1. What I do is I teach you how to think with the gut, and it involves hypnosis, so there'll be some guided imaging during the workshop to learn how to go into certain altered states of consciousness where your ability in guessing increases 400 times. First thing I do is get a baseline reading on everyone in the workshop. I measure their ESP, and then I go through what I discovered at Mission Control with Edgar Mitchell, 1971, what I did in the debriefing of Dr. Milan Riesel from Czechoslovakia, and led to the writing of ESP induction through forms of self-hypnosis, the first protocol for Navy SEALs, and how to think with the gut rather than using logic. And it's at the end of the day, I measure you again, and that's that. It'll be this Sunday at Riverside at Top Rock on the Rogue River. It's a beautiful, beautiful setting. There'll be a buffet during lunch break, and it'll be 8 hours. It's an 8-hour event. People that are interested, Medford Airport and the Riverside Inn is where you can stay, right next door, so it's walking distance to the Evergreen Room, which is hanging right over the Rogue River, and it's just a beautiful setting. I'm not going to be doing very many more of these because I'm getting older, and what I want to do is write, and so these are my leaving footprints. I've done these for a number of years. I've done one in Missouri with you, and that's what I'm doing this weekend. Yeah, Sunday.
And how
starts at 8 o'clock in the morning.
About this?
Well, my website has my website has it, and Facebook, both my Facebook presence and website.
Okay, class, this weekend is Sunday if you'd like to go. I've been there, and at the one I was attending, Rick, you asked the class to think of one question, and ask that question at a specific time. And the question that I asked myself during this hypnotic state was, should I continue broadcasting? And the answer I got was yes. And I was thinking that it should be no. That was years ago.
Logic go further. I thought, yeah.
I thought, darn. I was thinking that I could just kind of just be a farmer, rather than a farmer and a broadcaster. And I was kind of shocked that the answer was yes. But I followed my gut, and I'm still here. And thank you, and so are you. Mark, did you have anything else you wanted to comment about or share with us before we go into the top of the hour commercial break?
Yeah, I just had one more thing, but I'm thankful that you followed your gut and that you're on the air.
I am too.
Graham, everybody, all of your guests and everything. I just had one more comment, or maybe a question for Doc Ram, and that is, he mentioned about this 25,800 year cycle, and the ancient pole star during the time of the Pyramid of Giza, when it was built, was Draconis, and called Thuban, and it's also the pole star. It's faded away now, but it's going to come back, Thuban, and I was wanting to know what you thought about that.
That's going to take a little bit of a thought on how to respond, because there's so many different directions I can say.
Well, Rick, if you want, think about it during the top of the hour commercial break, and let us know what your thoughts are when we come back. Mark, thank you so much for being with us and joining the broadcast today. Mark's always thinking outside of the box and from the norm. Brilliant questions. Dr. Richard Allen Miller and I will be right back after the news, some commercials, and I've got some questions for Rick about how bad it's going to be and what. We're all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. Richard, ALANMiller.com. Rick, did you have any comments on what Mark mentioned? Mark from Illinois.
You know, I could go on for several hours, so what I'm going to do is step back for a moment, and we'll save that question for another time when I have more energy to be able to approach that kind of, it's so complex. And I if I'm going to make a comment, I need to make one that actually has resonance. And I don't feel competent to even respond to that. I would like to. And so, and Mark is a really interesting person. I guess one thing during the interruption, I should mention that my event on Sunday is going to be recorded, and it will be at some point available online for those that wanted to participate but could not take it physically. I'm getting older, and so I don't do as many events as I would like to do. I am spending more of my time writing, and I love to do that. And but what I do in terms of workshops is important, and leaving footprints. And so, yes, that event, for those that called in earlier, will be recorded and will at some point be available online. Whether or not the internet exists shortly is another big question of mine.
Okay, and along the same lines, I have stepped back from public appearances as well. And I thought, I might do another one or two. And so Mike Ma, a dear friend of USA Prepares, he's been to the farmhouse, he's shot me. He's a pretty interesting guy. He's a very interesting guy, and he's one of our senior instructors, of which there are just a few. Well, Mike Ma is going to be in the Springfield Village on Friday, October 26th, and he's going to be talking about three-man militia. Now, it doesn't have to be men; it can be men and women, and he's going to teach how to build a three-man militia, how to survive the grid-down situation. And those who are there, who want to be there, can write down a question. He'll put all the questions together, and he will respond to them without saying who was the questioner. Okay, so it'll be anonymous. It'll be a dinner kind of a meeting, about 4 hours. But we need about 25 people in order to do this. So if we have 25 or so, or maybe even 10, we'll do it. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. You can't do it. So if you're interested, please send me an email send it to instructor@usaprepares.com, instructor@usaprepares.com, and I will make sure that we get back to you and let you know about the event. But I'm going to need a phone number. Now, where does that information go? It goes just to me. Okay, I'll put this together. I'll make the arrangements, and we'll go to a restaurant, and we'll have the event. But at this point, there's not enough interest. There's not enough. I can't believe it, but there's not enough interest for us to have the event at this point. So when would it be? Friday, October 26th. It'll be in the evening. It'll be like a dinner and 4 hours. And if you're interested, Mike Ma. And Mike's not going to be doing these forever either. So I'm not going to say it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but I will say this. If you've been in training with Mike Ma, you will remember it for the rest of your life. No question about it. No question about it. Rick, would you say that Mike Ma is a pretty interesting guy?
I love Michael. Mike is, I'm concerned about his dog. I used to, when I met Mike, his dog would ride on his motorcycle with him with goggles and helmet and all of that. It was wonderful. Mike gives a very interesting person, and is also going to be my friend in 4 years. You tell him that.
Wait a minute. No, he can't be your friend in 4 years because I've known you a little bit longer. He might be your friend in 5 years.
I see. Well, he was the first person I met before I met you. He was the one that picked me up at the airport, and boy, was that an interesting
you're talking about
drive. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any shootouts on the way back?
No, but he showed me his weapons, plural. No, Michael he's a very interesting person and someone I respect. And I did some research on his three-man militia, and he is correct. It is going to be your neighbor that saves your life.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, class, if you're interested, send me an email, please, at instructor@usaprepares.com. So, Rick, you and I talked about volcanoes. We talked about the possibility of them erupting and how catastrophic they would be. And here's what comes to my mind. We have these nuclear power plants all over the United States. Actually, we've got them all over the world. And these nuclear power plants must be cooled either by air or by water. And even when they're cooled by air, I believe there's water involved anyway. So there's circulation of water. Now, back in the 1960s, my family built a house, and we had a water well on our property, and it had what was called a shallow jet pump. And it was made by Myers, and there were two pipes that went into the well pump in our basement, and we had a well water tank, and this pump that would extract water from, let's say, 88 to 100 feet deep. So it wasn't all that deep of a well back in the 1960s. And we got a little tiny hole, I mean a pinhole, in the PVC pipe that went to the well in one of these two pipes. The house settled a little bit and cracked the pipe. Just a little, almost an imperceptible, tiny, tiny, tiny hole. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is it stopped our well from working. We could not pump water. The pump would run and run and run, but it would not be able to pull water out of the ground. All right. So if we have pumps that are circulating, cooling water at these nuclear reactors, and the ground shifts a little bit and breaks one of these pipes, and a little imperceptible hole develops in the pipe, and it starts sucking air instead of water, we won't have the cooling, if that's the kind of system they used when they built it, to cool the nuclear reactor, which could lead to a meltdown. Is that possible, or is my imagination run wild?
Well, that's exactly what's happening to all of the 21 Daiichi-like reactors that are on the New Madrid fault line. And Indian Point, and the one in Florida, they're all leaking now. and because of ground shifting. 3 Mile Island was something that should have warned everybody right from the beginning. And then we had Chernobyl, and then Fukushima. And Fukushima has now, it's confirmed, has now polluted more than 1/3 of the world's oceans, are showing signs of what happened in Fukushima. And that was only a 3-foot tsunami.
Yeah, and there are people on radio and television, talking mouthpieces, talking heads, saying, oh, Japan's thousands of miles away. They can't get there. It can't get here from there. Impossible. It's so far
incorrect. Away. It has just been posted. I posted how whale are using the gigantic underwater volcanoes as a superhighway in the way they migrate around the world. Now, we are only just now understanding this is where the greed and power of I want it and I'll let my grandson worry about how they're going to clean it up. This is where we find ourselves at this very moment in time. And nobody in the actual medias are talking about it. It's this movie that you have been promoting just recently, Designated Survivor. It is a situation that is caricaturized in that, that series that is now just exceptional, because this is exactly what is happening right now in the world with President Trump as our president. And if you don't think 9/11 was not perpetrated by someone within our own country, you're crazy. I can prove it. And the Mossad gave the weapon to our country. The Mossad didn't do this, but they absolutely knew about it. And what is happening today is like the Kennedy assassination. This is absurd. And people blindly are accepting the plausible deniability that we didn't do this. No, this was done by Iran. This was done by... listen, if you don't think that there's creepy people running our country, where did you grow up? I have just recently posted a thing about Bosnia, where there's a town in Bosnia where politicians are not welcome.
They're not welcome on my farm either. I hate politicians. Politicians are people who lie, cheat, steal, obfuscate, confuse. They say lie. They say lie. They're miserable people. They will, for their own pleasures, harm their family.
What happens?
I'm hearing that Joe Biden's a pedophile. Class, Rick Miller mentioned to you that I assigned the television series Designated Survivor as homework, and I have. It's available on Netflix right now, Designated Survivor. I don't want you to spend money, but if you have Netflix, this is a must-watch. It's a television series about a guy who would never become president, who never wanted to become president, who found himself the last guy in the line of succession. The last guy. And he becomes president, and he is an independent. He's not with the Republican crime syndicate, nor is he with the Democrat crime syndicate. And he's trying to put America back together after the government's been destroyed, or much of the government's been destroyed. And this is a series about greed, corruption, me first, lies, spins, murder, mayhem, civil uprising, conspiracy, White House leaks, false flags, yes. Past president lying, congressional greed. The list goes on. It's almost infinite. The list of sins that these people are involved in. Half-truths, untruths, obfuscation, misrepresentation, personal greed, it's corporate greed, spying, it's all there. It's all there. And when you watch this, you're going to say, wait a minute, I know that president. That guy's Donald Trump. He is the guy who is, yes, he hasn't always been perfect, but he's trying to do the right thing, and he's outnumbered, surrounded, top, bottom, left, right, every direction by people who are trying to take him down, people who are trying to make him look foolish, people who are trying to get him out of office. And he's just trying to do the right thing. And he's being maneuvered because he's outnumbered by so many people in the White House and in Congress who are trying to take him down and for their own personal gain. The country doesn't matter to these people. The overall good of the country doesn't matter. It's all about individual greed. And how did we get here? How do we get in this morass that we're in right now? It is the sum of all individual greed. That's how we got here. And it's an outrage. I'm angry about it. I'm watching the collapse of Sears. Oh, by the way, I mentioned to my son, Sears is on the throes of bankruptcy. They're probably going to announce it soon. When I say soon, I mean like any minute, okay? And if you have one of those credit cards that gives you Sears points that you can turn in for merchandise, I suggest you use it right now before they withdraw that offer. And Sears has been destroyed from within through mismanagement, through individual greed, serial mistakes. You know, Sears, if you were an employee of Sears, you get a 10% discount. And if you retired from Sears, your discount continued. Sears has reneged on that too. Sears. Not the same company that I worked for back in the early 70s. Sears has been destroyed. And I told our son, jump on it when? Today. Why? Because Sears is going to be gone soon. And I've mentioned it for a couple of years now, that Sears is out of business. They just don't know it. I'm sorry for that rant. Mark the Spark in PA. Welcome.
Hello, Vincent. Hello, Dr. Ram. Yes, Vincent, it's the show you mentioned. It is very incredibly thought-provoking and very revealing. On the subject of these designs for these nuclear plants, my understanding is that back in the day when the Oak Ridge laboratories were developing, I guess I have to wait.
You know what's really neat about our class? What's really neat about our class is they know the timing. We know the timing of when the commercials begin, when they're going to end, and when we pause to continue on the other side. It's really cool. It really is. And Mark the Spark just proved it. Yep, Mark the Spark in Pennsylvania is with us, and Mark in Western New York is on hold. Mark in Western New York, please stay with us, and we'll get to you. Mark the Spark, please continue quickly.
Sure. Okay, so on the subject of the nuclear thing, if my understanding is at a certain point there was a design choice, and they made the choice for the one that we have, which actually gave the output was depleted uranium, which they could use in war. But there was a safer choice. I think it was a thorium reactor, which was much, much, much safer. So let's go to this idea of, you talked many times, Vincent, about planned obsolescence, with these parts that they make that, and vehicles that fail, and they fail at a certain time. is not this design for these nuclear reactors, the one that we currently have here, there, and everywhere, this GE design, if that isn't a plan for, if that isn't planned obsolescence for the human race, I don't know what it is. But further, I wanted to touch base with you and Dr. Ram, because I don't know if you talked with Dr. Ram about this. I don't know if you've heard of the concept of the Mondragon model that I brought to your attention, Vincent, about a different way to organize people, where basically you get them back in touch with true ownership. See, we've been conditioned over many generations to lose the idea of our own authority and our own ownership, true ownership of ourselves and the efforts of our, the result of our efforts that we put forth. So many people have went to work for companies, corporations, whatever, and it's not an ownership position. And we've gotten further and further and further away from that. We were a farming, agricultural and hunting and ranchers and these, but we've gotten way away from that. So the majority of people now live in the big cities, and they've lost the idea of ownership. So the Mondragon model is about organizing people who willingly cooperate and who have a vested interest. And by the way, Beck, you mentioned when I brought this to your attention, Vincent, you said, well, like you gave the example where you would invest so much, and then and that's a good idea. But the way the Mondragon works is everybody has to invest. Now, they may not, even if they don't have the money up front, they can take a portion of their earnings and put it toward their nest egg of ownership, their vested interest in the company, and so they work it off, and they can invest more and more as time goes on. But everybody owns a certain part of that organized effort to make whatever or service whatever. So, but I see the challenge here for people is the analogy is back to the Bible, where there's many references given that people are like sheep, and the shepherd has to herd his flock, So I don't know if you ever raised sheep, Vincent or Dr. Ram, but I had the experience of that. And I'll tell you something, it is a challenge. If people are like sheep, when a ewe has her baby lamb, you have to almost force that mother ewe to recognize that it just had a baby, and to get it that it's hers. Although she's carried it around for months, in gestation, before she birthed it, do you think that she'd recognize it? No, she'll get up and walk away, and that baby lamb will die. So, I'd hate to think that people are like that, but it may be that the potential for people is there to lose their consciousness to the point where they don't even recognize the soul of their child. And, that's a daunting, challenge we have. So anyway, back to organizing around these ideas of,
Yes.
Back to organizing around these ideas of,
I believe Adolf Hitler.
What's that?
I believe Adolf Hitler did the same thing with the Volkswagen, that he had his factory workers, contribute to a fund, and that fund would get them a Volkswagen car at the end of the period that, some amount of time, they would contribute, 5 marks per contribution, right. And ultimately they would end up with a car. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And on that note, by the way,
model that you're talking about.
Right, similar. And by the way, Ford, I used to like Ford, and if old man Ford were still running the company, the products would be good and durable, because Ford wanted a working man's car that own working man could work on and keep it simple. But when the corporates got involved, they took over. Right. They took over, and they had a better idea, right? Which was to reap profits at the expense of the consumer, who was also their factory worker. So, but back to what you just mentioned about Germany, and I happen to be half German. We're told that America is the great economic model, because look, in the industrial age and all this, and over this period of time of several decades, look how powerful they become. Germany, when it took back ownership of its economic powerhouse, it did in 5 years what we did in maybe 50 in this country. They did in 5 years. And what they did was Hitler tapped into the working man's labor as an investment, as a power. And I think that we could do the same thing. But the thing is, the challenge to me is to get people to cooperate and to share in the prosperity, and set aside ego and set aside greed. If we could do that, we might have something going. But
can I ask a question? How do you spell the mandragoran? How do you spell that? I'd like to know more about that concept.
Okay. Go ahead.
MONDRAGON. MONDRAGON. It's like MON, MON, in front of the word dragon.
Yeah. And by the way,
is that called like an assembly?
Well, like what it was. I'll explain it. What it was during the time of Franco.
Have to go quickly.
Okay, during the time of Franco, when the Basque people of the northern region of Spain wanted to be independent, they figured out that they couldn't fight him because he was too powerful. So what they did was they regrouped and reorganized, and they took him on economically by being self-sufficient. They bootstrapped themselves up, and the idea came from a priest. It's called the Mondragon model, and it happened during I think it started like the 40s, the 50s on up, and they basically created cooperatives where they would produce products of this or that, and then when they had enough of these cooperatives, then they could exchange these products, and then they also exported them to the rest of the world. But anyway, it's a very interesting model. I think it could be workable. If we could get people to cooperate, set aside ego and greed, we might have something going. The idea of the intentional community, I'm all for this idea. It's just, and I've tried to get people involved with it, but when I was living in Missouri, I found them to be quite stubborn. And hard to change their ideas of idea of what's possible. So, but anyway,
Mark,
I'll leave it with that.
I'll tell you what, Mark. Let's do this. Let's do this. Why don't you and I talk off air, and we'll get you on the air, and we'll talk more about this in depth. How about that?
Okay, that's a good idea. Okay, thank you.
Okay, great.
And thank
Mark,
you, Dr. Rand.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Mark in Western New York, you're on with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Thank you for patiently waiting.
No problem, Vince. Regarding Fukushima, if we can discuss that, and I can hold through the break. A lot of people are...
Well, we've got some time. Go ahead.
They're totally unfamiliar with Fukushima. Anytime I've ever brought it up, I have to explain what it was, and they still don't realize the significance. This is... an ongoing problem. The reaction is still ongoing. The release is still going after 7.5 years. Jump in anytime. As where Chernobyl was supposedly stopped after 10 days. That's still very radioactive, but certainly one cannot ignore the fact that the radiation has covered the planet, decimated the northern Pacific, and it's been well documented. I also want to point out that you and Captain John, back in late 2015, did a whole series on Fukushima on YouTube, or on the show that's posted on YouTube. It was, I believe, late December 2015 into January 2016. And anybody who is unfamiliar with it should brush up at least on those podcasts or programs. And there's certainly some other good information out there. Unfortunately, not much of it. The Japanese have passed the State Secret Act, so you can end up, in jail or prison up to 10 years for divulging information regarding the true nature of things in eastern Japan or in the whole country. So there's been very little information coming out. Certainly, if you go to netc.com, you can see the counts per minute in different areas of the country. Some are quite high, especially in the Midwest, northern Midwest, Montana, Idaho, But there are some skewed results as well. Just clicking on the icon, the color of the icon, the 4 different levels, don't be fooled by the green ones. You have to click on the green ones and see what those read, because if they haven't gone up or down, they still may be high. This is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I've studied quite a bit. So I'll rest my voice.
Mark, let me make a couple quick comments. Number one, the Fukushima disaster. The day it went off was 11 March 2011. So March 11th in 2011. The next day I was on the air and I said, quote, Fukushima is the worst man-made disaster since Noah's flood. I stand by that. I have not wavered. I have not changed any words in that sentence. It is the worst man-made disaster since Noah's flood. And I want to comment very quickly on the NETC. Professor Mark in Western New York mentioned a website called NETC.com. And it's a website that shows real-time radiation across the world, but it depends on sites that report radiation. So not every place in the world has information on this map. But if you go to netc.com, you'll see these symbols that indicate levels of radiation. And they are starting with the lowest level, Radcon 1, then Radcon 2, which is a rising level of radiation. Radcon 3 is considered elevated. Radcon 4 is a concern/watch. Radcon 5 is alert. Okay? Well, if you go to the map, I'm looking at it live right now, the West Coast is lit up. And there is, if you want to go to Radcon 4, Oregon has a Radcon 4, California has a Radcon 4 right now. If you look at, well, here are the states that don't have nuclear reactors. They are Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, Idaho, and South Dakota. No reactors. But right now, South Dakota has a Radcon 4 alert. They don't even have a reactor. Okay? So something is going on there. The United States is lit up like a Christmas tree, and so is northern Japan. Actually, all of Japan's lit up. So, Rick, do you have any comments on what we've just talked about?
We're in deep trouble right now, and nobody is reporting it. Why? Why are the
because
major
corporate profits will go down.
Not even mentioning anything about this right now? Why? I don't understand.
I can see why. I can see why, Rick. When we hit full-blown collapse, and there are some survivors, and then these people emerge from deep within their bunkers, and they pop their heads out, and the survivors recognize them, and they go, "Whoa, oh, you work for GE, right? In the nuclear power division, right?" Boom. I think that's what's going to happen. "Oh, you work for the police. You're the guy that arrested my brother, right?" Boom. I think that's why these things are not being reported. Because the survivors are going to take out revenge on the perpetrators. Those with individual greeds. The cops who are putting notches on their ticket belt, for all the tickets they've written, people they've arrested, jailed, families they've destroyed. Companies, the captains of industry like Sears. Can you imagine what the employees are going to do when they find out they've been lied to? And General Electric and DuPont, the list goes on and on. Standard Oil. What haven't these companies done to destroy the planet? Has DuPont been DuPont been a good friend? I don't think so. Has General Electric? Of course not. Standard Oil? No. Merck? No. IG Farben? No. What company that manufactures has been a good steward of the planet? I can't think of one. Can you, Rick?
This is why I wanted to talk about this, and nobody is discussing it, and I've got to ask why. Why do I think I have the internet? I'm not even certain how accurate that part is anymore, because I've typed in names of scientists that I've worked for and worked with in the 50s and the 60s, and I can't find them on the internet. How does that work? You can go to Wayback Machine and I can find them. Why can I not find them with current search engines? AIs have slowly begun to take over. I have a concern.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how welcome Mark Zuckerberg is going to be after the collapse. I'm wondering. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just wondering. Mark in Western New York, thank you so much for calling in today. Don't be a stranger. Very, very good points that you brought up. Thank you. Doc Ram, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, thank you for all the time that you've spent with us here at USA Preparedness. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.